1 Samuel chapter 15, we read the account of Saul as he becomes the first king of the nation of Israel. If we remember, the design was that God would be the king of Israel, a theonomy. But the people of Israel succumbed to peer pressure, and they wanted a king like all the surrounding nations. They wanted to be like everybody else. So God gave them King Saul. And Saul was a tall, mighty warrior. He was a kingly-looking guy. One of the first tasks of Saul was to go and to pay back the Amalekites for all the troubles that they'd given Israel over the years, starting from the days of Israel in the wilderness. And God's command to Saul was to go and to wipe them out. God would go before him in battle, and he would take an army of Israel with him, and he was to leave nothing alive. I know that sounds drastic to us in our modern world, but that was God's command. So Saul goes, and he goes to battle and has victory in the battle, but he does not obey God fully. For one, he saves Agag, the king, and then he looks around and sees all the livestock, and so he brings back all the best livestock, the prime stuff. So he brings back the spoils of the war, the king and the spoils of the war, in direct disobedience to God. So as he comes back, proud of the war, the battle, he builds himself a monument and is rejoicing in it and heading to Mount Carmel. But then Samuel at the same time has been told what he has done, and Samuel goes to meet Saul. And when he meets Saul, I love it what he does, because he greets him and says, "Saul, what's the bleating of sheep and the lowing of cattle that I'm hearing?" It was a creative way of calling Saul out on his disobedience. Interesting to see that Samuel would also use a creative way to point out David's sin later on in his life. But what we recognize in Saul is his disobedience. He went and he did what God asked him to do, kind of. And that's so true for the rest of us. But I want to show something. If we go down to verse 22 of chapter 15, let me read this. "Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifice as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams." That is so true to us. Saul was on his way to sacrifice. He thought he could just kind of halfway obey God and then give a really good sacrifice and God would be okay with it. You know, as we go through our lives, we also have to understand the best way we can glorify God, the best way we can worship God, and the most faithful way to worship God is in obedience. Let me say those words once again. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of the rams. Are you listening to, reading the Word of God? And are you obeying it? I'm Bob Orner, and I'd like you to think about that.